Entrepreneurial Edge is brought to you by Business Banking from FNB, because small ideas can lead to big business. FNB, how can we help you?
Welcome back to the Entrepreneurial Edge. If you have any comments or suggestions on the show, please send an email to entrep@abn360.com. Still with me in studio, Malik Fall, outgoing Managing Director of Endeavour, Head of Business Acquisitions at FNB, Sanjeev Ori, and Tebogo Skmbane, Global Partner at Monitor Group. Thank you for staying with me. Now, Endeavour, in partnership with FNB and SAP, recently launched its third edition of the Entrepreneurial Dialogues. One of the main topics of this discussion was obviously the four models or four archetypes for entrepreneurship. The first is the Silicon Valley model. Give us an overview of that.
Yes, that's the one that people get the most excited about, because it's based on the successes that you've seen out of California from the Yahoos and Googles of this world. And it's basically where you have world-class universities and research centers that create IP-based products and services. So a lot of sort of technical people, academics, who are always, in the laboratory sort of coming up with great IT products. The question is to commercialize those products and turn them into thriving businesses. That's where the challenge is. And typically what's required is, next to this academic community, is to have a venture capital community that understands intellectual property laws and also understand how to translate this innovation into a business. So in South Africa is one of the emerging markets that has a huge potential for that, because it has places like Stellenbosch, UCT, WITS, where this kind of IP is being created. What's lacking is the linkages between the venture capital community, which is still very small, and also the intellectual property framework that can turn those products and innovation into businesses quickly, because time is also very important for that model to work.
The biggest thing, of course, firstly is funding. And as Malik alluded, we have a very small VC community. Perhaps South Africans are very conservative when it comes to investing in risky ventures. We know technology is high risk but high return. How do we get that balance right?
I suppose just in that statement alone, Natasha, there's an opportunity. So, it's an entrepreneurial opportunity in creating more venture capitalist or type companies. I think importantly around the funding, though, the funding will find you if your idea is strong enough, if it's powerful enough, and if you're able to back it to the hilt. And I'll cite an example. So toward the latter quarter of last year, we had a company come to us, and it was escalated to me just based in terms of what sort of funding they were looking for. It was just north of 10 million rand. But the idea was just so good. It was so intuitive, to the extent that FNB wanted to partner with the organization as well. But then I think they realized that the idea was very good, and they said, no, we'll just take the loan for now. But there are some very good ideas there. And I think even in a personal capacity, you'll find lots of people who are willing to invest in it. The stock market across the world right now, I think, you're struggling to get reasonable returns on it. So you'll find a lot of investors, particularly entrepreneurs who've been through the cycle. And in my day-to-day role, I meet with a number of entrepreneurs who say to me they want to invest in the next generation of entrepreneurs. So I think if your idea is strong, if you're able to back it, I think the funding will find you.
In terms of the Silicon Valley model, it's part of the four development archetypes that your group came up with. When you're looking at the trends towards investing in technology, towards investing in Silicon Valley projects, you have monitors all around the world. What has the uptake and the risk factor been there?
I think there's certain nodes around the world where we've seen a lot of that. You see India now, well, for a number of years now, where there's been a lot of technology development.
So emerging market?
In the emerging markets, definitely. China, obviously, as well. I think South Africa, we need to really think about it in a little bit more granular level, not South Africa as a whole, but really let's look at our regions, let's look at our cities, and what sort of models are applicable, what sort of models would we want to go after and develop in the different regions, in the different provinces, in the different cities.
Because the challenges differ. Just in the break we discussed this, in an area like the Northern Cape, where the technology infrastructure is perhaps not as developed as in Gauteng. Are these the challenges that they should be looking at?
Absolutely, and the technology route isn't the only route for entrepreneurial success or entrepreneurial ventures, and as a result, economic growth. There are lots of other sectors that there's a lot of opportunity for. I think if we look at the difference, as you said, between the Northern Cape, Western Cape, Gauteng, KZN, there are a number of different areas of competitiveness that each of the areas can get into, each of the regions can get into. Yeah.
Now, a model that seems to be gaining traction in South Africa is the mothership model. And it refers to local companies creating spin-offs and then setting them up and funding them. We've seen the likes of Discovery being successful through First Band, the same with Outsurance. Are big businesses doing enough of this? Are they buying into the concept, though?
Well, I think that there's certainly a lot of goodwill. We also heard it from Anglo, who participated in the summit and the paper, and other big corporates. I think again the issue comes to the devil is in the detail. For example, to give you, in some regions of the world, companies would provide incentives for talented executives to start businesses, whereby they would say cover 80% of these outgoing executive salaries for a year or two while they start their businesses, or provide medical cover, or other sort of things that make people nervous about going on their own. So I think what is required in South Africa is a detailed study of how and where those archetypes apply and could be refined. And that's what we also were trying to sort of, that was the message of the summit as well, to sort of get this study going so that you can go a little bit deeper in terms of policy and initiatives.
So with the mothership model, the entrepreneurship versus intrapreneurship debate comes. Malik said maybe some top executive taking the business forward, but you're losing that talent as well. It's not part of the core business anymore. How do you make sure that you foster the talent to build these new businesses, but as a business you don't lose all of your talent at the same time?
Look, I think if there's economic growth, business will benefit. So if as a mothership can be part of fostering that, talent and growing that talent and spinning it off into creating other businesses and other economic growth within South Africa, that can only be good, I think, for industry as a whole and for business as a whole. Yeah.
Corporate appetite for funding these spin-offs. I had a chat with Adrian Gore a few months back, and he told us the story about how he actually approached Laurie Dippenaar and the guys at RMB. Is it all about the business plan?
I think so. I think the mothership model resonates with me because I'm part of First Rand and First National Bank, and it's a very entrepreneurial culture, and I think it gives rise to a lot of intrapreneurs as well. So I think it is around the business case, but also the appetite. So a number of the innovations, and I think FNB has taken the lead in terms of innovating in the financial services and products. So a number of the ideas that we launch and get to market, what I think the public or the community doesn't see are the number of business cases that fail in getting to that point. And I think a business case by itself doesn't pay homage or doesn't take cognizant of all of the other business cases that came before it. So I think the appetite needs to be there. I think it's a cultural shift. You need to want to be innovative and entrepreneurial to be successful. So it's not just the business case, I think it's the culture as well.
Let's quickly go to the local hero model. It's celebrating our local success stories. Do we celebrate our heroes enough?
Not enough, no. The short answer of it. And two things. One of the things that came out of the paper is not just about celebrating the heroes, but celebrating the journeys of the heroes, because people have this sort of romantic and idea about the successful entrepreneurs, the Adrian Gores that you mentioned, but very often without appreciating the sort of obstacles and hurdles that those people went through to build their businesses. And that is part of the entrepreneurial culture around not just celebrating people who have succeeded, but really sort of valuing the journey and giving those values to youngsters and other people in the community to appreciate the effort that those people have put to be successful.
We mentioned in the first half there's a bit of a skewed view on what a successful entrepreneur is and what a successful business journey is. Very much skewed towards the corporate journey, as we alluded to. How do we encourage and create that culture and that value that entrepreneurship and the leaders created out of that are just as good as their corporate counterparts?
Sure, I think it's almost a philosophical debate. So we'd identified a number of archetypes. I think there are a few additional archetypes as well, and I think a key focus needs to be on the youth. I think they are generally not as risk averse as people in the middle of their careers, together with people who I think are cresting corporate successes. So people, I suppose, 50, maybe a little bit later on in terms of age, but are looking to start second careers, and generally the general tendency is toward the fact that you've been in a role and you've been fairly successful. How do you give back, particularly around following your passion? So a lot of people have great ideas around a coffee shop or sweets and delicatessens and that sort of thing. It's how do we unlock those sorts of debates. So I think you remove risk from the model, and then you start creating the appetite to show where successes can be.
And celebrating those successes means sharing your story. How important is mentorship in this specific model?
I think absolutely. I think that we see it as very important in all spheres. In entrepreneurship, I think particularly, because we don't see enough stories about the journey, as Malik said, mentorship is the other way to get that journey, or to get an understanding for what that journey needs to look like and what your own journey could look like.
We're quickly running out of time. Closing thoughts from each of you, 20 seconds, what you'd hope to see before the launch of the next annual white paper and entrepreneurial
I'd
dialogues?
love to see, first of all, a study to look more deeper into the archetypes and how they apply in South Africa. And then I'd love to see the sort of the top leadership from all domains, from public sector, private sector, of course, but also academia, get involved and creating platforms to sort of lead the movement of entrepreneurship in the country.
Sanjeev?
I think everything that Malik said, but in addition, a little bit more pragmatic. I'd like to see more business cases. I'd like to see people who are sitting on good ideas that have imposed their own hurdles, self-sabotage, try and bring those business cases to us and just start. I think we just need to start.
Tebogo, our lady, final word.
As Monitor, we've done the study in 22 countries. We're hoping to get 38 countries rolled out by 2014, and I'd like to see South Africa on that list in 2012. I'd like us to have executed the study, as Malik said, by November, and be able to talk about what we found, be able to talk about what kind of policy changes we need, and what the role we need government to play, private sector to play, and entrepreneurs to play.
That's fantastic. We look forward to seeing the progress. That's a wrap for this episode of the Entrepreneurial Edge. Until next week, from myself and my guests, it's goodbye.